Okay. All right. Hey, Cam, how's it going?
Pretty good, man. Just another day, another dollar.
Living the dream.
Exactly.
That is awesome. Hey, it's been a few weeks since we've last talked. We got on the phone and you told me a little bit about your role at ARIS and the fact that you're managing the AWS Alliance there. And that was really cool because that's a job, that I did for many years. I'm also at AWS. And it was really interesting to kind of talk about your pain points that resonated deeply with me, which is why, we went ahead and built Partner Assistant AI. But this is really, this is a podcast, and this podcast is all about partner intelligence, which is a new category that we're defining. And you are our fourth guest. This is only our fourth episode. And I'm really thrilled to have you on. Just to give people a little bit of a context on what's going on. So my name is Latif Hamlani. I'm your podcast host. And, I would really like to extend a warm welcome to Cameron Sharp, who is the head of, and I want to make sure I don't screw up your title, the head of CSP Alliances at ARIS. ARIS has quite a rich history of acquisitions, but the business unit that you were in, if my understanding is correct, was part of Software AG, which is the world's largest and oldest software company, European software company based in Germany. So, thrilled to have you on, Cam. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about, is AWS the primary alliance that you manage? What are you?
So yeah, I'm Cameron Sharp. Been in alliances now for a decade, which feels more like 20, 25 years, give or take, in alliances. And anyone in alliances will understand that joke because things move rather quickly and nothing stays the same. I primarily focused on Azure relationships for many years. This is where I got my start, was working on contracts with Microsoft in Washington, working out of Bellevue. And then I transitioned that into contracts working on partnerships, and then went from working with Microsoft to working with partners on behalf of them to Microsoft. And then eventually came to a company called StreamSets that I had to learn about AWS, fell in love with AWS as an organization. And I've been primarily focused on the AWS relationship for StreamSets, who was acquired by Software AG, Software AG, who was acquired by Silver Lake. Silver Lake, who then brought us private, and we became Software GmbH, because AG means stock traded in German. So we became Software GmbH, or Software LLC. And
Mhm,
then ARIS recently split off of Software LLC as a standalone organization, still under the Silver Lake umbrella.
mhm,
So I manage the AWS relationship and the Azure relationship, but our primary hyperscaler is AWS. So
mhm,
I
mhm.
spend most of my time there, and then a portion of my time focused on the Azure relationship.
Fantastic, fantastic. Really appreciate that. So, Cam, let's just dive in. I'd like to really start this conversation where we left off the last time we had a chat, which is really by asking you a leading question. You know, co-sell with the hyperscalers is complex, right? Working with AWS is complex. I know because I've been there on the AWS side, managing partners. I've been a AWS partner myself. There's a lot of busy work. There's a lot of complexity to co-selling. And I'd love to understand. I know what I went through, but I'd love to understand how much time that complexity is costing someone like yourself who's doing the same job. I'd like to hear from your side of the story. What you're going through on a day-to-day basis. What does a day in the life of Cam Sharp look like? Cam Sharp, the AWS Alliance Manager for ARIS. You're reviewing probably hundreds of deals. You're a big company, and you're having to figure out, hey, am I selling with AWS here? Do I need to be selling with Azure here? It's taking you time to register those deals, make sure the information is plugged in to the deal registration portal the way AWS wants to see it. So, walk me through a little bit the day in the life of, and talk to me about the complexities of this job.
Absolutely. So every day is wildly different than the last. There is some consistency to it. And that's the admin of it all. That's the deal sharing, the deal scrubbing, the deal launching, the tracking of migrations, the focus on doing marketplace deals with customers that where it pertains or it's applicable. As a great example, we use a tool called tackle.io.
Hmm.
Fantastic tool, love it. But just like every other tool, it has its limitations. And although it's made my life a lot easier when it comes to sharing deals, it is still a manual click where I have to go and I have to click, and then there's data mapping in the background that pulls most of the data in. The most consistent piece of data that does not exist on, I would say, 85, 90% of deals in our system is the description of the opportunity.
Hmm.
Right, and that might be located in a different field. It might be in the next step section where it tells a story over all the next steps, but
Hmm.
I can only map it to one field, which I map it to description because that's where you're supposed to put it, opportunity and then description of the opportunity, right? But people, salespeople don't follow, everyone follows their own paradigm and how they operate. And it's impossible to get all your salespeople to operate the same way. It just is. So I end up having to enter that data myself or find it. And then if I can't find it, then I have to reach out to the seller. The seller doesn't get back to me in a timely manner. Then I have to use templates. All that takes me time, right?
Hmm.
And when you're talking about 600 to 750 deals shared every year,
Hmm.
that's a lot of time. That's a lot of time. You think, say the average deal takes 5 to 10 minutes per deal, multiply that out by 650 to 700 opportunities, and
Right.
then multiply that out by two clouds.
Hmm.
So having a tool that could scan opportunity and then enter that data into that specific field would be invaluable, right? And that's just one thing. That's one field, one thing, right? Then there's also the fact that not all sellers will take the time to ask the right questions at the beginning of a sales cycle to figure out, hey, Mr. Customer, who's your primary CSP? Who's your primary hyperscaler? Who do you work with?
Hmm.
Right. And then, we get telemetry data from both Microsoft and from AWS, but we also get it from Tackle
Hmm.
that tells us they have a high propensity, medium propensity, or low propensity to buy through the AWS or the Azure marketplace. And that's
Right.
a telltale sign of who they partner with the most, right? But then there are times where they're high on both. And then it's like,
Hmm.
well, customer discretion at that point. Do you want to be on AWS? Do you want to be on Azure? Right. So then they have to ask the question. And there are hundreds of deals every quarter where no hyperscaler is listed. So I have to go into the opportunity. I have to ask the right questions. I have to look at the telemetry data and then I have to edit it.
Hmm.
It would be great if there was a tool that could look at telemetry data for me and ascertain, is this an AWS or is this an Azure customer? And then
Right.
just do the simple click on that field, right?
Yep.
It would
Yep.
save me hours a week, which, is maybe 1 or 2 full weeks of work for me in a
Right.
fiscal year.
Yeah.
And and then I can actually spend that time on doing front end stuff that's benefiting the company rather than the admin of it all. And there's a
Oh,
bunch of little other things, little nuances, right? Like the opportunity IDs that come back from sharing an opportunity. I have to copy paste those over into the field so that I know the opportunity has been shared, right? So
right.
I'm not double dipping and resharing the same opportunity. I have to
Yeah.
enter in the contact information from the seller that comes back,
Oh boy.
and then I have to tie it to that account into the opportunity section where it says opportunity contact roles.
Yes.
All these things take minutes of my time,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
we share 1,000 plus leads a year between the two hyperscalers. So
Oh boy.
a tool that could easily just do that for us is invaluable,
Yeah,
truly.
yeah. I mean, what is that old expression? Death by a thousand cuts, right? I mean, each little task seems, well, it's just a couple of minutes here and there, but then it all adds up, right? And that's kind of
After
the
10
call
years, it
it work.
adds up.
That's years of your life gone doing busy work
Yes,
on a keyboard,
never get it back.
right? Instead of spending time with your partner, building relationships, going on webinars, going to events, working on joint sales plays, all of that good stuff that we really ought to be doing, right? As
Well, I still do all that stuff. I just also find myself at night having to catch myself back up on all the admin of it all
Oh
because
my goodness, you are
it's not like
reaching
the meetings stop or the webinars stop or the in-person conferences
oh, no,
stop.
no,
Like,
no.
I'll be at an
Right.
in-person conference and I'll
Yeah.
be still doing this manual stuff
Boy, yeah.
in when I can find time to do it while I'm at the conference. Or I'll, at the end of the conference after I've had a super long day and I
Yeah.
get back to the hotel, I'm just sitting there doing the busy work. You know what I mean?
Oh, bad. Yeah, no, no, you're preaching to the choir there. And, the other complexity or challenge is not just that, but it's a, it's a moving target, right? These hyperscalers are constantly, they're improving their programs, which is good, but things are changing and you got to keep abreast of all the changes, changes in the co-sale process and the ACE deal registration portal. And I'll just give you some examples. And I did a post recently on this, and the heading of the post was AWS partner rules are changing in 2026. Right, here's what you need to know, and there were some interesting changes that came in this year. For instance, specialization, which is a big deal. Competencies and specializations now require that your ACE opportunities, your launched ACE opportunities, your live ACE opportunities, that they're not tied to your solutions, right? And if they're not, then you're not gonna get the credit for those deals that you close around those joint solutions. Another one I'm just reading off the list here is if you have inactive solutions in Partner Central, those are going to disqualify your renewal. So you better make sure that you go in and make sure those solutions are active. They're being kept up to date. Another one is that
Active FTR,
AWS is. I'm sorry.
an active FTR, a
There,
foundational
there you
technical
go.
review.
Right,
Yeah.
right, and those take a lot of effort. Another one here, I'm just going through the list is, AWS is shifting from this concept of just validating to value realization, right? Which is a long word but basically what it means is, now they're looking for proof. They're looking for proof that you've closed a certain opportunity around a certain joint sales play. The customers was successful. They validated the results. So they're really looking for the proof as opposed to saying, well, we do A, B, and C, and this is how it helps the customer. So they're looking for that. They've now got this feature called Express Private Offers that automates custom pricing. So there's a lot going on. And unless you're making these changes, and if you forget to make one of these changes, you're pretty much, you've lost the case. So motion is going to fall behind. So love to, any other thoughts you have on that? And, are you kind of
Well, I mean, AWS, Microsoft, they're changing their partner programs and the goal line constantly, right? And it's just about staying in front of it. So we're lucky enough to have an AWS PDM that's very senior and very good about communicating these types of changes to us well in advance so that we can get in front of it, right? So that I can work with the engineering team, whoever I need to work with in order to make sure that we deliver what we need to in order to keep our partnership where we are, right? And or advance our partnership. And a lot of that stuff is scorecard stuff, and people don't really see the rhyme and the reason to it, but there is a rhyme and a reason to it. I mean, the FTR is there to make sure that from a foundational perspective, your solution is set up in the right way to where you're not leaving gaps for people to be able to come into your product, right? It's
Mhm,
all about
mhm.
security and making sure that customers can trust the product that AWS is allowing you to sell through their platform, right?
Right.
And then, not so much with AWS, but with Microsoft, they'll make wide changes, right? And then they'll give you death by PowerPoint. Well, they'll send you the information about all the changes that have just occurred in a 120 slide deck that you have to read through. And, thanks to AI, you can actually feed that slide deck to
Right.
something like ChatGPT or something like that and say, hey, pull out the measurable changes, and you give it both. You give it the one from last year, give it the one from this year,
Mhm.
and say, tell me what's different.
Right.
And so it's saved you a lot of time in figuring
Mhm.
out like what's changed. But then there are some things that you just don't hear about, right? Like there are things that pass you by that you just don't hear about or that are not broadcasted enough. So having some intelligent AI that's just living inside your Salesforce that can tell you about, say announcements at what they used to call Microsoft Inspire, which is like MCAPS, I believe now, or things that happen at reInvent or any of the other large broadcasts that the two hyperscalers do
Mhm.
would also be invaluable. And then actually getting that message out to the sellers, right? Like I'm one person
Yeah.
and communicating something out to the sales team, which is global, is always a challenge,
Right.
right? Getting them to pay attention to the things that matter when they matter, right?
Mhm.
And they're
Mhm.
being pulled in 1,000 different directions constantly. We're constantly trying to do new campaigns, new programs, and things like that. So getting their attention onto something that's very important is difficult. And so if there was something that could ping them and say, hey, just so you know, here's what's changed and give them a synopsis. And then
Mhm.
it could do that again
Right.
and again until they
Right.
understand like this is not going to stop. Like you need
Mhm.
to understand these things because they're important to the business. That would be also extremely helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really interesting point. So it's not just the, deal registration process that takes up a lot of time. It's once they validate the deal and they've assigned a seller, that's when the fun starts, right? You've got all these emails
Yeah.
going back and forth. Who is ARIS? What is this opportunity? What's in it for AWS? When is it going to close? Who are the other partners? A lot of those emails, to be honest, going back and forth, if you've got some kind of an AI tool that's built context around the partnership and around the opportunity, you can have an agent answering a lot of those questions, right? And so, yeah, it's interesting the points that you bring up about what happens after the deal is registered, what happens when the fund starts, when you're collaborating not just with AWS, but you're collaborating with a global systems integrator.
Yeah.
Maybe you've got a couple
Right
of
party play.
technology partners, right? And all that critical information that's getting lost in Zoom calls, critical information that's sitting in a customer RFP doc on someone's Google Drive. So yeah, good points.
Yeah, it's about just opening the curtains and making sure that everyone's on the same page.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, I like that. I like that metaphor. Cool. So here's the question, right? So the question always becomes, how do we, what are the next concrete next steps? Is there, for instance, you're working for a large company, you've probably got to go through and build a business case for AI. Is that something that you think would be pretty straightforward to build a business case, kind of an ROI for bringing in an agent that helps you automate? Again, another leading question.
Yeah, I mean, ARIS is a very particular case because, like I said, we've gone through many acquisitions. We just divested from a company that acquired. So ARIS was founded in 1992, right?
Yep.
And it was acquired by the Shear Group, in I think 2000, like in the two, and then Software AG bought from the Shear Group the ARIS product from Shear, in like 2007. So from 2007 through 2026, it was a product that was owned and operated by Software AG, and then for the last 2 years, Silver Lake, right? And then now we've completely divested as our own standalone company, which means we got a new CEO, we have a new CRO, we have
Hmm.
CMO, CFO. Everybody with chief in their title is new
Yep.
within the last year, right?
Hmm.
And so we're all trying to get our bearings with the new way that we're operating. And so, we're working with consultants, we're figuring out how we're doing things, and the path forward looks really strong,
Hmm.
but there's not the super clear path on here's the problem, here's how we're addressing it
Right.
right now, right? Or we are doing that, but more large scale, and then it moves to more double click in, figure out what we could do better here specifically, right?
Got it.
Like we're hiring the headcount that's necessary to backfill some of the things that we've already noticed gaps in, like partner marketing.
Mhm.
There's a gap. So we're
Right.
right now we're hiring a partner marketing manager. We're going to get some partner solution architects. We're hiring two partner solutions architects, right?
Yeah.
Because these things are gaps that were pointed out to the new leadership, my new boss,
Yeah.
or the CEO, so on and so forth, and they've taken the appropriate action to fill those gaps.
Right.
And then
Right.
once those things are in place and we still see the gaps in the things that I've discussed here, then it's about, I've already, with the help of my operations lead, Frank Speck, we've already built out the use case and we can accurately show like, here's how much time I spend, here's how much time he spends,
Hmm.
here's how much time, different partner alliances managers spend working with
Hmm.
GSI, so on and so forth. Then it's a very easy thing to say, okay, well, if someone like me working with GSIs is constantly doing this repetitive action that takes
Hmm.
them 3 hours a week, 52
Right.
weeks in a year,
Yeah.
that costs this company, if you look at their hourly or their salary and you divide it out,
Hmm.
X amount of dollars. And you look at mine, do the same thing. You look at the next person's, do the same thing. You
Hmm.
quickly create a very easy defined ROI on removing these manual tasks from these alliance leaders,
Right.
right? And that's a very easy thing to do when the timing is right, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Much
interesting.
easier to do for a company that's, they've been operating the same way for 5, 10 years,
Right.
and the clear escalation path, right? Very easy for them to do. We're just a special circumstance.
Yeah.
So
It's really interesting. And everything you've just said, absolutely spot on. But we've been focused on in this conversation on the bottom line. And when you start thinking about the top line, all the deals that we've lost because of this, right, miscommunication, between partners working on those deals. Sales cycle that, a deal that took 3 months to close, that if you speed up the communications can be closed in 4 weeks, or the ability to maybe increase the deal size, making the solution a little bit more tailored to what the customer wants. That might involve a couple of more partners, but then your deal size goes up, right? All of that good stuff, which is top line, more revenue. We haven't even covered that yet, right? In the RO, and already we have a pretty solid case. So that is fabulous. Hey Cam, you are a very busy man. You've got a lot going on. So I don't want to take up much more of your time. But I really thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing your insights. As I said, I've been there. I felt the pain. We're really looking forward to having ARIS as a customer. To our audience, thank you all for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Put in comments, reach out to me. If you want to have a chat with Cam, that can be set up. But really, really appreciate all your time. Cam, have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, Latif.
Take
Bye,
care.
everybody.
Bye.